Hey, everybody, it's Ryan Woodard
Ashleigh Early.
and we're back with another episode of The Other Side of Sales. And today I'm excited to bring you guys Mercy Lee Bell. She's the founder of Bell Heart Productions and executive producer of the global wellness event Sober Voices. So welcome, Mercy.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Teed me up beautifully. And I'm not blushing, so it's actually really a perfect intro.
Awesome. Well, I reached out to you because I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak before, felt the impact of your story, and wanted to really have you on the show and kind of share your story and your, all the amazing things you bring to sales with our audience. So I'll let you kick off. Is there anything that is kind of a big gap right now that you have identified in the sales world that you want to speak about?
It came when you were just speaking. I was thinking about this actually yesterday. I was thinking about how our childhoods and our early experiences, particularly painful ones, can really become the superpowers or the skills we use most in sales. And I don't know why I thought of it when you were just speaking, but I was remembering as a kid, I had a house with a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of fighting. And I remember being really hypervigilant, which is a term associated with trauma, but that hypervigilance, being really aware of surroundings, looking out for people's expression changes to know who's getting angry or sad or mad, really all of that tightness in my body and that observational kind of like juice, like all of that is what fueled my sales career. So when I look back at childhood, I go, oh, some parts of it were tough. I actually can rewrite that particular script and say, well, what about the tough things, particularly when we're young, really breed amazing sales skills? And if we could learn to celebrate them, what would that look like to really be able to own the parts of our past that create our success in the present and the future? And that's what I think I want to talk about today. It's really how we harness those things that are hard, because they're really, really powerful when we alchemize them, when we move them from just the sad parts of our stories into our present day capacity.
I love that. And especially because I think it melds really well when we look at a lot of the hiring issues that we have. Like I work with a lot of companies and they're like, oh, well, I'm not getting a lot of diverse candidates applying and I'm not getting this, I'm not getting that. It's like, oh, because you're requiring that people have 4-year degrees and have like the solid work history and all these other things. Like that's not possible for a huge swath of people. And aside from that, you say you want someone who knows how to hustle and knows how to grit and grind and stick it out. And yet you're specifically hiring exclusively upper middle class white boys. Yeah, I did not to diss and not to say there isn't trauma in that group, but let's be real for a second. The life experience of someone from that group has, while there may be struggles on an individual level, as a group, they don't have the collective trauma of brutal honesty. The other two people I'm on this call with who are people of color or people who had to immigrate or didn't go to college or any of these other types of experiences, like you said, that look like their weaknesses, but really their strengths. You look at someone who, and I've said this before on the pod and a bunch of other places, like I will take the person who hustled their butt off at Men's Warehouse for 5 years and managed to make themselves like the number one sales rep in the state over someone who has a sales degree from Harvard pretty much every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Because that person knows how to hustle in the real world, not just in an ivory tower.
So I agree with everything you just said. And then this makes me want to add a small caveat, which is while hypervigilance and the ability to hustle and all of these survival mechanisms lead to my success, without an actual ability to like slow down, take care of self, and actually confront and maybe even do something different than hustle culture and hypervigilance, I'm not going to make it in my career. So there's actually a duality that I haven't figured out. Let me be super, super clear about that. I know how to work really, really hard, in part because like things weren't always great as a kid or even in adulthood. but I also don't really know how to manage my energy, my resources, my time. It's that double-edged sword of like, I know the things that will make me successful from hitting the numbers, but how to actually hit those numbers and not burn out, how to hit those numbers or not have all my relationships suffer. You know, I love we talk about burnout, but for those of us who don't really ever quote unquote burn out, we just keep kind of like being exhausted and kind of like mean to people, you know, in our lives that we love because we're constantly stressed, you know. I don't know, it's not quite burnout, it's just like constantly slightly burned. And
No,
you know, I can do that for a decade.
No, honestly, and I'm laughing because I'm literally in the same boat as you right now. I am in the middle of planning what will be my first vacation, no joke, since 2017.
Yeah.
Because every time I've had to take time off as vacation, quote unquote, it's because I was moving, I was switching jobs, whatever. And then it's just constant. Yeah, it's like there's a term that's been used a lot. It's not quite the same thing, but around the pandemic, there's been this thing called languishing. That's scientists have defined as like this state of just perpetual kind of malaise that a lot of people have been dealing with the pandemic. But there is this like, I don't like, yeah, I'm laughing with you, Marissa, because I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's exactly very much where I'm like, I'm functional. I'm perfectly functional, but I am not at 100%. I know I'm not. I haven't been for months, and I probably won't be until I can actually shut off for, at this point, I think I'm planning about 3 weeks, and I'm freaking terrified. And it's making me work even harder to compensate for the fact that I'm going to have to take 3 weeks off. And it turns into this lovely, vicious cycle that I'm very good at coaching other people through and terrible at coaching myself through.
Yeah, and that's okay, because awareness doesn't really change anything. I love talking to people about this. I'm like, I love therapy, I love analysis. And the only things that have shifted my life are just like pure action, pure pivots in my behavior, even when I don't want to or think I should. And that's taken a lot of like, I guess, I have a lot of support structures in my life that are not people who help me understand why I do this to myself, but hold me to task to not. And it never gets more comfortable in my experience. But I know, Ryan, you asked me to share about my story in sales. So just to give some context to the listener, I'm 30 years old now, and I started my sales career at exactly age 17. I had arrived at Stanford University, and I had no money in my pocket for textbooks. And I saw a flyer that said student call center. I could call alumni. So this was 2008. It was right before the crash. And I get on the first phone calls. I have the Northeast Territory. I'm supposed to call alumni and ask them for money. And I'm calling Lehman Brothers the day after it doesn't exist. I'm calling Goldman Sachs when everyone's worried about their job. And I'm just asking a bunch of Wall Street dudes to like renew their $10,000 pledge. And I'm getting a lot of no's, as one could imagine, mixed with slurs and expletives and how dare you call me. And for whatever reason, the no's bothered me. But every 10th no would be punctuated by this incredibly warm and intimate conversation with someone who like deeply, deeply, deeply wanted to remember what it was like to be at that university, what it was like to be young, what it was like to be free, pre-job, pre-spouse, pre-kids. And I'd have this gorgeous conversation that was so intimate and meaningful, and it would always end with money. And I said to myself, not that this was sales, but I said to myself, whatever this is, this experience of deep, deep connection with someone, punctuated by cash, because I knew like that money would both like give me something, it would give the university something. I was a full scholarship student. I could not believe this was real. And I went through my 4 years at Stanford, working 20 to 30 hours a week in the call center. So people say, how was your undergrad experience? Did you see the world? Did you take all these amazing classes? I was like, sort of. I was also like a first generation college student who had never made money in my life. And I found out I could make it by getting on a phone and cold calling people and having every 10th conversation be something beautiful. So I was hooked from the beginning. I'm also someone in recovery. So when I look at it through the lens of addiction, the idea of like making these calls, hitting these numbers, getting the 10th conversation, some of that was compulsive almost, and it was rewarded. That's what always shocked me was like, no matter how much I worked, no one ever told me I was working too much or not enjoying my undergrad career. People were just like, wow, like what work ethic, or got promoted to supervisor, got to train other students on how to cold call alumni to fundraise. And it just felt like a constant affirmation of this lifestyle. And when I graduated, I went to a startup, And I got a call and I was basically poached. I was poached from Google to go work at another startup. I don't know, Google was a startup when I was going, I think I was still technically. They said, we heard about you in the call center at Stanford. We'd like you to be our first sales hire. And I think that really cemented for me that, okay, I guess I'm in sales now, because like that's what people are referencing. I guess it's what I'm good at. And I guess it's what will make me money. And I didn't stop for 5 more years. But what happened in the 5 years of being in tech startup world, in raising the money, right, all this speculative like value, is I really aligned myself with my numbers. And I really stopped thinking of myself as a person and started thinking of myself as an output machine. And when the highs were high and I was ringing the gong, I was near God status. And when I couldn't ring the gong or the company wasn't doing well, life was now meaningless and I was in an existential crisis. So I share all that to say, sales is absolutely what I love most, but it has to be tied to something greater than the output. It has to be more about the intimate conversation than the getting of the cash. It has to be more about the connections than the outcome. And for anybody like me who deals with substance use, substance abuse, you know, highly functioning alcoholic is how I would define myself. No one told me to get, you know, no one told me to do anything. No one said you need to go to rehab. No one said you got a problem. It's just, I mean, my outcomes were always good. What are you going to say? The number one sales rep who likes to drink a scotch with the engineers every night. Like, what are you going to say to her? Nothing. So for me, I have to divorce sales from just outcomes, just performance, just myself. Because if I don't, the pressure of it combined with the desire to drink, I really don't think I'll make it. You know, so I've 5 years sober, much longer cleaner from any other substances. And I'm just so grateful to not be in a world of sales that's so pressureful. Like I don't feel pressure to perform because I really do believe I have value outside of what I do. And I didn't get that from therapy. I actually got that from taking opposite actions. So instead of going into another tech career, I literally had no job for 6 months. And I had to hang out with the uncertainty, the fear, the who am I without the calling and the cash. And it took years before I arrived where I am today in a totally different industry. Took years to feel like, oh, right, like here I am. And no matter how this goes, it actually doesn't really have anything to do with me, weirdly, even though it's all technically on me as a business owner.
That's profound. I mean, that makes me think of like evoked a ton of different thoughts going down a bunch of different memory trails. Like I think of, you know, I was blessed to have a pretty stable household, but my dad, he came from both of his brothers, actually all 3 of his brothers suffered from substance abuse. They pretty much drank themselves to death. His youngest brother, once he turned his life around, soon after he ended up getting cancer and passed away prematurely. And my dad served in Vietnam and really just had like this is the way you do things. You don't ask questions. He wasn't, you know, abusive or anything like that, but he was very much a authoritative figure that you didn't question. And to think of like how it impacted how I approach things. You know, my early career, I tended not to ask questions about why I was doing something, even though he like really was big on like question everything, question authority. It was just something about like the way, you know, he says one thing, but he acts different. So I tended to take a lot of things people said to not really mean, you know, like question anything. And when I had experiences like, I think of like one time in retail, there was a training for management. I went through the training and the person that ran the training was like, if you have any questions or anything, think of me as a resource. And the first time I reached out to him as a resource, he turned around and like pretty much spurred me and reached out to my regional manager. I was like, why is he even asking me this question? Why aren't you enabling your people better? And I felt like a pawn used to like make somebody else look bad and in turn like made me look bad. And so there's a ton of different things to unpack here, but what I'm trying to get at is like, how how do you think like a new hire that's fresh out into the college, fresh out of college or fresh out of even high school, that's looking to break into tech, that doesn't feel confident, doesn't feel like they have any competency either, really find the resources necessary if they're not, the person that puts in the time outside of work to level themselves up? And, you know, where you think somebody would search right off the bat, or how would somebody kind of balance those challenges of feeling like you have somebody that's in your corner, but then you don't really trust them, and you don't want to burn any bridges, but you also don't want to be looked at as somebody that's just like um, static and not really working towards trying to better themselves. Because I've often heard, especially in tech, like you have to start the ball rolling if you're struggling, or you feel like you're going to start struggling. If you just wait for your manager to point it out, then you're not being proactive. But then oftentimes I felt like when you are proactive, then that stuff's used against you when, if you do come time to be put on a PIP, or if a performance doesn't improve, and then it just kind of like, it makes it hard to even reach out or feel like you even have anybody in your corner to begin with.
It's a great question around how we ask for help and how we build both awareness of what we need help on, and like then how do we actually activate resources. I don't think there is a single answer for that. I certainly haven't figured it out. Most of my journey of needing help has been hitting really, really deep lows, really deep lows. And then and then help has come in so many forms. I've had the serendipitous kind, like, like I'm sitting on a beach and like the right person walks by and gives me amazing advice. I've also had the experience of like needing to raise my hand for like medical support, right? So it's like there's not been one way. And then when it comes to working with managers and working with companies and environments, I don't think there's like a single answer. What I would say, if I could go back in time to the new hire, particularly because my challenges were so, there were so many layers. It's like a cake. There was like the sort of emotional stuff going on for me around like addiction and recovery. There was like physical stuff around burnout because I never slept. There was like a spiritual component, at least that's how I identify it, of like, how do I quiet my mind and connect to something that's bigger than just me or the quota I've been handed? So there were all these elements, and I don't know that I needed anyone inside of the company or my working environment to actually work that out. I really needed around me in my life, mentors, supportive figures. And I don't think they all needed to be in my industry, whether it was a therapist or someone who just understood what it was to be like stressed and high achieving, or what it was like to be XYZ in my situation. And I think finding those people actually isn't hard. I will go so far as to say it's not hard. They exist. They're all over. You can find them on Instagram. You can DM them. I have found my own mentors DMing people on Instagram I believe in and ask them for a quick conversation. So 100%. Just the hustle that we've applied prospecting, we can apply to prospecting for our own mentors. And I've literally had people I've met who just their vibe in a store, like I'm fairly extroverted, mostly because I'm afraid of people. But when I go to a store and I start talking with someone and it's just like an amazing convo, this is for my extroverts. If you're having an amazing conversation with a stranger and something in you strikes you like, oh, there's something about them that I want or admire or is missing. It's usually a sense of ease, a calm. Maybe you notice a type of wisdom they have because of what they're talking about. Truly asking an older, particularly an elder, just older than you visibly, for their information and seeing if you can get a coffee or have a phone call. I've literally just asked people straight up, like super awkward, like, would you be a mentor for me on first meeting? Worst thing they say is no. I haven't had that happen yet. It's such an honor. What flattery is this? A stranger asking me to be a mentor of some sort. And what I always explain is mentorship for me means, and I actually say it right then and there, because some people think mentorship is like becoming a parent. No. Would you be okay if we set, I usually do a quarterly, would you have to talk once a quarter, once a month, depending on that relationship, and prospect the shit out of it. Like you can really find people. You got to be willing. And if your work environment is toxic, they're not in your work environment. That's the craziest part, right? You're not going to find your homie if your work environment is filled with enemies. So going outside of where you actually live and suffer is a huge part for me of how I get help.
It's essential. That's been a huge thing in my own career. I call it going outside the family. Like you have to go outside the family. You need the sanity check from people from outside of sales, from people that are outside of your industry, from people that are outside of your geographic location. You've got to have these things. And I've had the same experience where it's like, I didn't, like I did the mentorship programs at a couple different places and it never really did much, but and it was terrifying. And I'm an extrovert, and Mercy, I hit so hard with I'm an extrovert, and I go up to people and I have conversations with them because I'm scared of them, because I'm the exact same way and I've never heard it phrased like that. So I'm going to be unpacking that all night.
Yeah.
But it literally just, it was terrifying in the moment, but every single time I've been just blown away, just going up to people who I idolize. And I used to do it at conferences, but now I can do it on LinkedIn, literally just dropping a sincere note. Hey, I really appreciate XYZ that you said. I've been following you for a while, or X, whatever. Can I please buy you a virtual coffee? 99% of the time they're responding me like, yeah, of course, anytime, what works for you. But that genuine connection, everyone is, and I'm lucky I'm now at a place in my career where I am this person. People have done this to me. And I consider that an incredible privilege and an incredible compliment to what you said. But most people, when they get to a certain point in their careers where they're at a place where they can give back, it's ironically enough something you don't have a lot of time invested in going and finding ways to give back. So you reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me, actually does the helper a huge service, because now they don't have to go look for ways. People are finding them, and that's a big help. And it's important to, especially I think in sales and connecting with elders, cannot stress that enough. I've, as someone who lost her grandparents in my early 20s, I don't have those presences in my life anymore, and I miss them more the older I get, ironically enough, usually in the form of like, man, I really wish I'd learned how to cook X, or I miss not being able to tell Y. But even aside from that, just there is wisdom in generations that we are losing, especially with COVID, that we'd be fools if we're not actively reaching out and soliciting that wisdom from.
Absolutely. And as I've gotten older, and I'm 30, so it's moved out of mentorship into intergenerational friendship, which I don't think is talked about enough, because at some point in our career or in our sense of self, we feel like, okay, mid-career, like you're like, okay, I'm here. Even asking someone in their 50s or 60s to be a mentor, that's totally fine. And also it's okay to stand in that you're going to bring a wealth of experiences and insights too. And I have truly asked, like, do you want to be friends? Like after 2 or 3 conversations, like, because I think naming and establishing a connection is so important. And also really sharing with that person what their mentorship or friendship or whatever has meant. Just this pandemic year has really opened up a lot of friendships with people older. And I found that, it is professionally and personally really helpful.
And I think one thing that listening to both of you talk is how extremely difficult it is as a male to do some of these things, because it requires like a level of vulnerability that we're often taught, going back to like being a child, that you don't behave this way, or the gender stereotypes that showing vulnerability is a form of weakness. And typically we just don't like meet a guy in like second or third conversation like, hey, you want to be bros, or you want to be friends, or so it's just listening to this is really helping me like think about how I can go about things differently, or seek some help in certain areas where I feel like I'm not performing the best from outside of the tech sales realm. I've kind of done it, and Mercy knows you both know I like woodworking, and there's a guy that I watch on YouTube a lot named Bent. His YouTube channel's Bent's Woodworking. If you ever check him out, he actually moved to Greenwood, Indiana. And so I just like slid in his DMs and recommended like some places to eat on the South Side, trying to just kind of like have, get that friendship going. So I haven't reached out to him a while, so I might have to drop him a line now that you're kind of spurring this creative approach to things and kind of getting me thinking outside of the box. One thing I also, think is really tough for anybody, but especially I feel like for males, is kind of identifying that you do have like a substance reliance and then overcoming that or breaking that reliance on it, and being open to talking about it without, like, I always fear like if I talk about some of my past challenges that it's going to rear its ugly head in the future. So when I sold heavy equipment, I was let go because I failed a P test for marijuana. I never was a operator of the equipment. I never was like under the influence on the job. Most people know if you smoke a joint on the weekend, it's probably going to stay in your pee for the rest of the week, probably the rest of the month, and can rear its ugly head. So I've like, for me to even like talk about this openly in a public space like this is kind of fearful. I don't really know where I'm going with another question around it, but just felt like it was something I wanted to get out and have a conversation with you guys about.
Yeah, Ryan, you don't have to have an answer. It's so cool. Like I heard you say multiple times, it's difficult, but like it's also perceived difficulty. Like we both have a single mouth with a tongue and teeth, and we have the exact same effort level required to say, hey man, do you want to go grab coffee? I'd love to learn more about woodworking. It may be inside of gender, like roles, society, all the fucked up parts of the gender binary as a cultural construct. There might be many reasons why it's easier for me, but it's just perceived ease. Meaning like all the things, talking about substance reliance, talking about anything, it is perceived difficulty or perceived ease. Like it is in our minds, and that doesn't make it feel any better, right? Like it doesn't make it any easier in some ways, but just keeping in mind, like with all this stuff, most of it is in our heads. That like doesn't make it not real, but it's mostly in our heads. I mean, here's a way to think about all things that are difficult. Supply and demand. There's a demand for honesty, a demand for vulnerability, probably even more among a lot of male identifying folks in sales who might feel there are all these perceived barriers to doing so. So you actually have an opportunity, there's a market opportunity here to be the supply. It's a whole other way to frame this whole thing. Not difficult, not easy, but where's the supply and the demand here? Let's use capitalism for good for once. Like huge demand for people to be honest. I want to shout out Chris Anthony. If y'all don't know him, credible VP at Salesforce, the sober exec, came out as sober after 15 years, quote unquote, in the closet about his sobriety. I don't know, something like 12,000 followers on Instagram, created a 400-person sober force at Salesforce, right? Like these employees who are just openly talking about what life is like. It is all in our heads. And I consistently, what I work on, and it is not like I do it well, because I woke up today very irritable, is how do I reframe this whole situation? How do I reframe everything in my life? Because most of it is in my head. Am I an extrovert who's afraid of people? That really helped me. That really helped me, Ashleigh. Yeah. Because that actually allowed me to not be so aggressively social, because it's actually a way to avoid intimacy for me. So what I've started to do is go to parties and say nothing, and actually be open and vulnerable to who wants to connect with me rather than always trying to initiate to stay in control. And Ryan, for me, like absolutely first talking about substances, talking about alcoholism was like, I can't, I'm a Black woman in sales. There's like 5 of us. I literally cannot be that person. And then I just keep practicing, because you know what? It's an honor to be sober. And I run a conference that brings together thousands of people to talk about the absolute joy of being sober, whether it's sober while you microdose, sober while you smoke a joint. Like, what does life look like without alcohol at the center? And it's an honor. It's a complete reframe. And never in a million years, if anybody was embarrassed or upset or thought I was horrible for doing it, They don't live in my frame. So I couldn't even see them if they didn't like me. It's a lot of liberation. And it's a muscle that comes through action. At least for me, I have not yet been able to analyze my way out of bad framing. I have to live in the new frame. Talk about my alcoholism everywhere. Talk about my weird extroverted, like freakish extroversion, which I'm working on every day of my life, to not say hello to every single stranger. So all of that to say, it gets easier in some respects, also gets so hard. Because I don't know about either of you, and I don't know about any listeners, but I have moments in my career where I know what I'm doing isn't working. And in my personal life, I know what I'm doing isn't working. And I can see with perfect clarity over there the other thing I could do that would change this, that would interrupt this pattern of pain. Whether it's like I used to get all these health problems related to drinking and overwork, but I could see exactly what I needed to do and I couldn't do it. That is the most painful part, is that in between moment of awareness but no action. And what's so amazing to me in my life is like, that doesn't last forever. That's the real hell. The real hell is knowing I need things to be different, consciously knowing what to do and not doing it. That's the most painful spot. What's amazing is that the pain gets so great at some point, a change does occur. It has never been true for me that if I'm living in deep, deep pain about something I'm aware of and taking action on, that some shit doesn't change. Sometimes it's not what I want, like it's a, incurable chronic health condition, but most times it's something like me just getting off my ass and doing the other thing I've been so scared to do. So for anyone listening, everyone's always like, oh, what are your techniques? What are your strategies? I'm like, my strategy is get to a point of pain, celebrate that point of pain, and the pain will actually do all the work for you. You will be in so much emotional, spiritual, mental, or physical pain. I promise you, you will change. My hope for you is that the pain comes early enough. You're not doing all this changing, in your 60s. And the pain could be you just hearing this right now and being like, damn, she's right. Or, ooh. And maybe this is the moment that everything changes in your life and you do that one thing you've needed to do.
And beyond that, I think it's not even just that. I hope someone gets an epiphany and has the big moment, but I also hope whoever you're listening to, you thought of something when Mercy was just talking. When Mercy was just talking. You thought of something that you need to do that you're not currently doing. It doesn't have to be big life-changing things. I thought of something. I don't know if I'm going to do that thing or like the version of it.
What did you think of, Ashleigh?
Oh, I watch too much TV.
Oh, me too.
100% watch too much TV. I don't know if I'm going to do the thing I was thinking of or some variant of it, but something came up. Pay attention to whatever the heck came up, process that, and do something with it. I don't know many people that won't listen to that and won't do something. I don't know what that is, and I don't know if it'll do anything, if that'll be a big life change or it'll just be a little light relief in your life. Just do that. Do the thing you need to do at least once, like tomorrow or whatever. And sometimes they're big and sometimes they're just little silly things, like maybe don't spend an hour watching TV every morning.
Can I challenge each of us right now? I think this could be really cool, especially since you have some editing power, to actually practice what we preach. So I'd like to challenge each of us to identify on this call one thing that we have been avoiding. We know if we did it. I think, Ryan, you may have already said one. Something if you did could change something or interrupt a pattern. I have one that I really don't want to do. But I'm curious if either of you see there's one that we could do today as a group, and we could even just send a little voice note, add it to the end of this call for any listeners, and just see what happens. Like, just like a check-in, like, did it change anything? Did anything happen? Was there, some forward motion on something we've wanted to see change?
I think I'm just going to buy a Peloton. I think that's
I miss my Peloton. I had one and I sold it when we moved and I miss it.
Well, I've been like teetering on that. And so I feel like they've got like the Peloton Plus that I look at, I feel like every day. And it's got like the screen that swivels around and got all these like different HIIT exercises and so forth that are in it. So we have like this area in our loft that's kind of our like exercise area that has a bench and weights. And I feel like if I added a Peloton there, that I would take that big step. One, I have some lower back issues that are genetic, plus somebody at Wisconsin Dells. If you've ever been there, it's a fun place to go. But they have like a go-kart thing, and this lady just came in hot when you're supposed to slow down and rear-ended the mess out of me, like almost off the track. And I was so angry that I probably should have like slowed down and got her information, but also like that, oh, I'm okay, I'm a young, like tough male. And I think it caused some more issues to the good old back. But now it's at a place where like I feel good enough. Obviously I play a lot of golf, but yeah, I think a Peloton would help, because it'd be like no impact exercise. It'd strengthen my lower body, my legs, and then having all the HIIT exercises and the other exercises built into their program. I feel like that'd be like one step I could take that would like have profound impacts on my health.
Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. I know that you think it's true. Let's find out if it's true, if it's the one action. What's so cool is like, we don't even have to get it right. The very act of hitting go on that, it might be just the thing that shifts it altogether. You know what I mean? Like, oh, wow, I'm willing to put down, it doesn't always have to be money at all. Like, I'm willing to do something so outside of what I would normally do. If that's one of those actions for you that's so outside of it, something probably will come from that, you know? Like to say, I'm actually worth a bike like that, with that swivel screen. So whether it's that or something else, we're putting you down for that. Is that what you want? Final answer. We're going to be editing this down, so it's no explanation. I don't want y'all to have in this like, oh, and maybe just I want to hear the single declarative statement of like what you will do. Is that really what you want, Ryan?
Yeah, I'll buy the Peloton. I'll actually use it daily.
Woo!
Daily, okay.
So the wild part about this is, when does this air?
I think we're shooting for late September, early October.
Okay, so beautiful. So my intention is that like whatever we all say, we all do the voice memo, you know, later, you know, and talk about what actually shifted, if anything. That would be my hope. I'd hope we could condense this interview down so that it's like people can really hear. And Ashleigh, do you have yours? And y'all can think about it a little longer. It doesn't have to be right on this call. I just want you to.
I think I got mine. I have this fun situation where, because I moved to Europe, my day doesn't start until technically sometime between 2 and 4 o'clock. So I work until 11 or midnight. So, but that means that my day is shifted, kind of almost inverted in the sense of what it was when I lived in the States, where like in the States, it'd be, I'd get up, I'd work for 8 hours, then I'd have my evening and do whatever I was going to do in the evening. Since I moved over to Europe, it's turned into what I do is I get up and I do kind of my evening stuff in the morning. And I think the thing that's going to shift for me is, I think starting my day with 2 hours of Netflix is a really bad idea. I think it's affecting my productivity. I think it's getting me in weird states of mind and not setting me up properly. So I'm committing to not turning on the TV unless like legit crazy shit news is happening. I need to check it for the first 4 hours of my day.
Amazing. And can I ask, in addition to that opposite action, if you were going to put something in the vacuum of it, what would you put in the vacuum?
Books.
Of those hours?
I've got a pile of books I need to be reading.
Same here.
Okay. Can I ask you to add in something that soothes and nourishes your spirit, like, or like your heart? Like, is there anything, if books are it, that's amazing. Is there anything else that
my sci-fi books are it? My sci-fi, my fantasy. Oh yeah.
Oh, we need to talk. I'm a sci-fi fantasy nerd.
Oh, I've got the next 3 Witcher books going. I've got the first 2 done. I've got the next 3 in the series queued up. I am ready for my Geralt. Let's go.
Okay, hold on. You don't even know. So we're gonna start a book club because I've been needing that really much in my life, to read with others. Like, that's a way I can connect with people genuinely. So let's be in touch.
Okay, yes, please, because I've been craving doing some sort of like sci-fi nerdy girl book club too, actually, for like a year. I just been need to find, and I know a couple other girls who actually might be up for this, and maybe some guys. I don't know. We'll see.
So maybe, but this is what's so beautiful about just sort of saying to other people, here's what I'm going to do different. And then also we're going to need some support, because I know what happens when I start to think about doing things differently. And I, like Ryan, I hope you reach out to that woodworker. You know, I hope that for you, because you totally deserve that, and he deserves that friendship from you if y'all want to be friends. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things of, but once we start really thinking about changing life, at least for me, I get scared. So book club, books, Pelotons, life, it's all gravy. Small opposite actions can change the course of our entire life.
So Mercy, what are you
I
going to
really
do?
believe that. Yeah, I got some really yucky ones coming up. So I live in this state of declaring because I have to do what's called step work. I don't have to, I choose to. And right now I'm in the process of writing out a list of people I've harmed. And these aren't people I've harmed like while drinking. It's really like people I've harmed while I've been here, sober, theoretically smarter than I was, like, like friendships, relationships. By the time I record my voice memo, I will have started a process of amends. So imagine going to every single person you've hurt and actually seeking to make it right. So I've got, 10 plus people. People say, yo, that's so intense. I do this every year. And I go, how free does anybody want to be? I can only be as free as my shame. So like, I have a lot of people that I've mistreated, and oftentimes in small ways, but they add up, right? All the times I worked with someone and I kind of was sharp on that email or that meeting, it's time for me to make that right. Usually it means owning my behavior verbally face to face to them and seeing if there's anything I can do. So that's the thing I want to declare on this, because that's something I can really share come the end of September, how that's changed my life. And it's available to people even not in 12-step recovery, to just like, really, what is that phone call that feels impossible to make? Who's the person that I'm still holding resentment towards, even though I probably had a part in it? That's like what my world is in the month of September. So I'll let y'all know how that goes.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking, like, what's the big one? Not the bike. I think the books are pretty powerful, but like, what's the big one, right? Like, what's the big fucking change that will change my life? Because the little things that I try to swap in and out, it doesn't seem to make a big difference. But the big things that make my stomach literally roll as I think about it, those things, typically once I get through them, my world is different. My mindset is different.
Now you've got me thinking more.
Yeah, think about it more. That's why I'm saying I'm glad we practice. I think we can edit that out, but like, I'm just glad we practice talking out loud. Like, what are the things that will change my life? And you can talk about it really vaguely too. Like, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm trying to reconnect with my, yeah.
I do.
Actually, we're starting a book club though, just so it's clear.
Oh, yeah, that's happening. That's a necessary step at this point.
I do think though, like one thing that has really helped me last year and this year especially was like committing to my goals around getting better at golf. One, golf is like extremely mental. You're not like really competing against anybody else. So if I can hit now, like I'm proud to say, I can hit like a 270 yard carry drive off the tee and then turn around and hit like a 221 that fades. Some might call it a slice, but fades to the right and doesn't hit the fairway. And it's so frustrating. And you're like, what the heck? How can I like hit a PGA Tour type shot one time and then turn around and hit another crappy one? Like I was playing with 3 guys the other week and I was like 100 and it was a par 4. It's like 400-ish yards, 400 and some yards. I hit like 270 off the tee. So I want to say I was like 130 yards out roughly. And I got a 9-iron and hit a perfect iron shot. Had like the divot in the ground where the dirt flies up and the ball landed like literally like inches away from the hole. I just tapped it in for birdie. And it was like, having that like happen, just like, it's one of the best feelings I can relate to as a middle-aged guy. It just feels like, I mean, it's pure bliss when something like that happens, because it's like, this is what you see on TV. This is amazing. And the reason why, like, I started thinking more like, why does it feel so good to me specifically? And I remember the first time I like got invited to a golf outing, I was selling heavy equipment and I show up and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like, oh yeah, it's golf. It's easy. I'll be able to hit the ball. And I'm absolutely terrible. Like the ball's barely going like 20 feet let alone like, I think the best I got was like maybe like 100 yards, and it was with the hybrid. And all it did was like go maybe like 50 yards and then just rolled for the next 50 because I hit it so hard. And my boss at the time was like, I mean, they were getting a good laugh out of it. And I was like, oh, I'll be good in like a couple years. Don't worry. Like I'm the type of person that if I put my mind to it, I'll be good. And I was like, I'll easily be able to hit 270. And he busted out laughing, like legit was like stomach wrenching laugh, and was basically told me like, you'll never hit a 270 drive. And I actually wrote about this over the weekend, that I was going to put into like an inspirational post, because now I've like not consistently every shot, but like I've hit a 270 carry drive straight onto the fairway more times than I have digits now this year. And so my next like goal is to consistently shoot in the 90s and 80s, and that will make me feel good as far as progression. And I really hope like one day he watches this episode and knows that like I'm subliminally talking about him, and like, damn, he hit 270 now. Or maybe I'll have to like post a video with my post and be on the range with this golf tracker thing that shows you like your carry and all this stuff, all the metrics of your golf shot, so that he can see it for himself, where I can't lie or fudge it and guess, but it's actually like a fact that this happened.
What made you think of that?
I think I thought of it because it was something that I like dilly-dallied with. Like I was kind of like, I got some starter clubs, I took like a lesson, but then like I didn't really commit to it, and I never really got better. And then this year and 2020, when you couldn't really do anything but golf because it was like the one sport that was like social distance acceptable, I like really committed to getting better at it. I put more money into it, and I took, like didn't just go to a lesson and then stop. Like I actually practiced at home.
Okay, got it. So you're saying a
Fully
level of
committed.
commitment. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Made me start having these results. And so now I'm trying to think of like that other thing that I could fully commit to, because I do have this confidence that like when I do fully commit to something like this, like the Peloton, even though like I may not roll with that, is for this exercise, like I'm going to fully commit to that. And I know like I'll see the fruit of my labor, so to speak. And so I'm just trying to think like another area of my life. Like I've recently stopped drinking, mainly because of some health concerns with my GI tract, but I'm already seeing like benefits around it. And
Cool.
so I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, a little bit. But the golf thing was like,
Yeah.
for anybody that's ever been doubted or like had somebody doubt them, you can't let like your own perceived shortcomings, let alone somebody else's perceived shortcomings, really like hold you back. Because if I would have been in that mind state I was in when I first started playing golf, I would have never got better, and I would have probably given up. But instead I like kind of tore down the perceived shortcomings that I had and worked at it and got better. And I feel like it kind of applies to like SDR work and sales in general, that once you start breaking down some of those barriers, you can break through and start to achieve things that you maybe never thought you were capable of achieving.
No, and tying it, I'm gonna go full circle and tie this all the way back in, because Mercy, you hit the nail on the head earlier talking about everything is about your perception and how you frame things. And I see this a lot, especially when I'm working with people early in their careers who cold calling is terrifying. Cold calling is really hard. Writing emails is really hard. And it's all these things. It's all about that context and that story you tell yourself, to go full Brene Brown for a second. But it's really true, because it's really easy to tell yourself, oh, I just suck at cold calling. Oh, I hate cold calling. Oh, I hate writing emails. Oh, I hate doing Salesforce. Oh, I'm not good at this stuff. The more you tell yourself you hate something, you don't like doing something, whatever else, that like it literally puts a full-on like damper on your ability to up level that skill, and it will continue to be something that you are not good at. And I'm really lucky. I haven't done that a ton with myself in my career. I found other people doing it to me. I saw it a lot around when there were points where I was hitting ceilings in my career, and I was being given caps like, oh, well, she's never managed closers. Never mind the fact that no one ever gave me the chance to, or, oh, she can't be strategic, or these other things. And it's like, okay, so then I get the layer of what you were talking about, where it's like, okay, you telling me I can't do something, watch me. That's the contrarian, slightly competitive, no, not slightly, horrifically competitive brain that I have. It's like, you want to tell you want me to not do something, tell me. If you want me to do something, tell me I can't do it. I will do it just to prove you wrong. But a lot of people aren't like that. But it's interesting. And we've talked about these mental blocks. I literally blew past one of my biggest mental blocks I've had in my life yesterday, weirdly, which is I am not athletic. I am not someone who goes out. I do not work out regularly. I'm terrible about physical self-care. My family has a history of health issues as a result. That was not modeled for me growing up. It's still not something my family does. But yesterday we went out because my husband got himself a really nice bike because he's trying to get more active as well. And I made a deal with him that every minute he spends on the bike, I will spend doing something similarly. But yesterday was his first time with this new bike. And so we went out for a bike ride because we live in the Netherlands and there's 1.5 million things you can do on a bike here. We went out, and before yesterday, the longest I've been on a bike was 18 kilometers, which for me was huge. I'd never been on a bike really more than like since I was a kid. Yesterday, we did 66 kilometers. And the last 20 of those were into wind, and I wanted to die. There were points where I was literally like screaming into the wind because my husband's like a mile ahead of me and I've been left in the dirt because I'm not on a road bike. I'm on a little city bike that does not have gears to ride into wind. But I kept going. It was like, no, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to I've never been at a point in my life where it's like, okay, well, there's this horrifically athletic thing I'm doing. I'm just going to keep freaking doing it. I'm going to get home. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just doing it. If you had asked me the day before, can you do 66 kilometers? I would have been, oh, hell no, no way, not a chance. I'll die. I'll fall over. I'll kill myself. I'll end up with an asthma attack and end up getting hauled in an ambulance. No clue. I got home and I was like, if I can do that, what else can I do? And what the hell is my excuse for not doing this more often? So it's crazy the things that we tell ourselves are not possible, but totally are if we just try. And that's not to say that I am not walking slightly bow-legged and sore as hell today because, oh, that is happening. But there's such a freedom that comes from realizing these things you've told yourself your whole life you can't do. And you just knock one of them down. What else can you do? What else is possible? What else have I been telling myself I can't do that maybe I can? Or that society's been telling me I can't do that maybe I can? That my boss has been telling me I can't do and maybe I can. I just can't do it with them because they're jerks. Or whatever else. There's so much out there, and who knows? I mean, now I'm sitting here going, maybe I can do 100. No, screw it. Not maybe. I can, and I will. I don't know when. Definitely not this week. But it's fun to start thinking about that. And that's a much better frame of mindset to be in than I can't.
Think about what's possible rather than what you can't do or what's not possible.
And it is hard to do when you're stuck in that I can't place. It is hard to switch to that abundance mindset. It is hard. And that's why you need your tribe. That's why you need people.
Can I join the book club too? Because I need to read more, but I'm nerdy, and the fact that I used to play all the JRPGs growing up, all the Final Fantasies, Chrono Trigger, played Witcher 3 all the way through, so I'm familiar with Geralt of Rivia.
Oh man, yes, you can absolutely join the book club.
Sweet.
You can absolutely, any listener can join. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll create an open, you can sign up for this.
Oh, I think we'll definitely. I think we'll
such a pleasure.
Start a fun thing. There are definitely some. I know we've got some hardcore sci-fi fantasy people in the audience that are going to hear this and want in.
Amazing.
All right, this has been absolutely fabulous, Mercy. And we're going to end this episode the same way we end all of our episodes, which is doing our patented lightning round. These are a series of rapid fire questions. Yeah, patented. No, it's not. We're going to do a series of rapid fire questions. Don't think too much. None of these are too heavy except for the ones that are, but don't stress about them. Starting off nice and easy. What's your morning routine?
Every morning I wake up to a cup of coffee with oat milk, the barista edition. So it's really high froth. I genuinely listen to something inspirational. Sometimes it's a community discussion, around my recovery. And then if I'm lucky enough, I go into an outdoor shower here in Martha's Vineyard and I get dressed for the day. Sometimes I stay in my pajamas all day though, I'm not gonna lie to you all.
Those of you who are not watching this on video, Mercy has the most gorgeous forest vineyard behind her, wearing her PJs. I'm sitting here rocking my yoga pants, and I can't demonstrate this. I have a dog in my lap, but it's gorgeous. Mercy's doing this the way we all wish we should be recording every episode, outside in the sun. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
I'm gonna have to go with my fiance, my partner. He has done an incredible job of allowing himself to both love and be energized by his work, but not overly identifying with it. And it's been a huge impact to live with someone who doesn't believe their work is them, but it's part of what they do.
I love that. What's one lesson you wish you'd learned earlier?
How incredibly short life is, and how many people don't make it all the way to the end that they show in the Notebook. How many people just die senselessly or sensibly for no fault of their own, which makes the absolute impossibility for someone like me to say yes to a corporate career. So for anyone who's not into that career and they're working that career, I wish I had known, to leave a little bit earlier than even I did.
What book has had the biggest impact on your sales career?
Okay, let's go fantasy and sci-fi. So I would say Dune. Yes. Because fear is the mind killer. It's part of the litany, so it's like this idea of the only thing that keeps me from amazing outcomes is usually fear. And I'm not saying that in a woo-woo way, fear shuts down my mind. I cannot be intuitive, I cannot react, I cannot do the right things if I am in a state of fear. So Dune, because it really, really, really taught me I cannot live in that state, because I both cannot perform and I cannot enjoy. So if you have not read Dune, please read it. Do not watch the movie that came out back in the, I think, 80s.
Just don't watch the movies, just read the book.
The new movie though does look
amazing. Yeah,
we're all reserving judgment, but tentatively optimistic. All right, what's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
Gotten really curious about why I was successful and why I was not successful. I think about managers who would see me performing at a high level and explain it away because I didn't meet the idea of what a successful rep looked like. And I'd also have moments where I was really tripped up, and a manager also didn't have curiosity. So when I think about allies in general for life, there's a deep, deep curiosity without a desire to know. What's really going on over there for you? So that's what I wish. I wish for someone to have approached me with more curiosity than knowledge of why I was doing how I was doing. And that would have felt like true support for me, particularly early in my career.
Interesting. What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others? I feel like you kind of already touched on this with your pledge.
Yeah, I really try to say yes to every single request for mentorship. That is at the moment. And that means not coming I know what's going on for that person. I really try to practice I have a practice of listening because I'm a big talker. So what I do is a big part of allyship is listening as well. I'm trying to be better about that, specifically with mentees, just picking up the phone and letting them just share everything and come to their answers, not having answers for them. Another type of support is silence.
Yeah.
Straight up, with no opinions. or having opinions and shutting them down because you don't know the other person's experience. I'm working on that. So yeah.
All right. And last but certainly not least, what is your guilty pleasure at the end of a long day?
Oh my gosh, I almost want to ask my partner who's here across from me on this porch. Hold on, hot take.
Yeah.
Chad, what is my guilty pleasure at the end of a long day? We're on a podcast live, so don't answer embarrassingly.
Or do.
Oh, wow, very embarrassing, but we're going to go for it. He says something sweet like a slice of pie. And that is true. I am a dessert fiend. Tiramisu, a fruit pie, and it needs to be like, high quality ice cream. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, like a real good like warm apple pie with the vanilla bean on top, and it's just melting into it. And yeah.
If you ever end up in Indiana for some reason, go to Handel's ice cream.
Ooh.
Amazing. There's actually another place too that somebody recommended that's like more local than Handel's is. Handel's has a couple locations, but you can't go wrong with Handel's.
Okay, I love that. New sponsor. Handel's ice cream. That's
the other handle.
Might create some handles on you, but it's delicious.
As long as they're made with love. I really appreciate this. It was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And how can people connect with you? We'll put obviously all the details in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, follow you, keep up to date with everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm a big, all about the real world Instagram. So you can follow me at Island Mercy. Island spelled like island, Mercy, MERCY. From there, you can find my production company, our upcoming wellness events, and link to my French Bulldog Boston Terrier mix named Nugget Jebediah. And he is very popular on the internet. So
I love it. We'll put links to all of that in the show note. Mercy, thank you so much for joining us. This has been delightful. If you enjoyed this episode, please share about this on the social medias. Make sure to tag on Twitter, OSOS_pod, on Instagram at Other Side of Sales, or LinkedIn, Other Side of Sales. Not hard to find. We'd love to hear about it, hear what your plans are and what happens with those. Stay tuned for the postscript to figure out how we did. And with that, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and review. That really helps us be discoverable on your podcatcher of choice. And with that, we will talk to you guys next week on another episode of The Other Side of Sales.